They sent the obese alien princess as a joke, but the human mechanic's secret changed galaxy. The desert planet of Ravos 9 was silent that morning. Only the sound of wind brushing against metal walls and the low hum of machines filled the air. In the dusty repair yard stood rows of human workers, fixing old ships and broken drones. Among them was Ethan Ward, a quiet mechanic with rough hands and kind eyes. He worked alone most of the time, never asking for help, never starting trouble. Life on Ravos 9 was hard but simple, until that day at first. No one noticed the shadow moving across the sky. It was just another cargo ship, they thought. But the sound grew louder, deeper. A silver shuttle, huge and covered in alien markings, descended through the dusty air. Everyone stopped working, eyes wide, tools frozen in their hands. Ships from the Xerax Empire never came here. Not after the war, not after the humans broke free. Yet here it was, landing right in front of them. Engines hissing like beasts. Ethan wiped the sweat from his face. Squinting through the sun, he saw the royal crest of Xerax on the ship's side. A blue serpent wrapped around a golden sun. Every human in the yard stepped back, whispering to one another. Was it a raid? A new order? Or something worse? The shuttle door opened with a deep mechanical sound. From the dark interior, heavy footsteps echoed, slow and deliberate. And then she appeared. A tall, wide figure covered in flowing alien fabric stepped onto the sand. Her skin shimmered like pale silver beneath the twin suns. Her eyes glowed faintly blue, and her face carried an expression of pride and pain. But what caught everyone's attention was her body. Large, heavy, graceful in a strange, powerful way. This was no soldier, no envoy. This was Princess Lyra of Xerax, the daughter of the Emperor himself. Gasps spread through the workers. They had heard rumors of her before, the obese princess, a royal disgrace. A woman too big for war, too soft for leadership, and too proud for exile, yet here she stood, in the middle of a human junkyard. Her attendants stayed behind, leaving her alone. Even her guards looked away in silent shame. The local overseer, a short man with sharp eyes, rushed forward. "Your Highness, welcome to Ravos 9, he said, forcing a smile, but everyone could hear the mockery in his tone. The princess didn't answer. She simply looked around, her gaze landing on Ethan. For a moment the noise of the yard faded away. Ethan met her eyes, not with fear but with curiosity. It was the first time anyone had looked at her without disgust. The overseer cleared his throat. "She'll be staying in the east quarters," he said to Ethan. "You'll make sure her ship is serviced." Ethan nodded slowly, unsure what to say when he turned toward her shuttle. The princess spoke, her voice deep and melodic. "Do humans always stare this much?" she asked. Her accent was heavy, but her tone wasn't cruel. "Just tired," Ethan smiled faintly. "Only when someone interesting arrives." That made her pause, as if she wasn't used to being called interesting. For the rest of the day, the workers whispered and laughed behind her back. They said the Emperor sent her here as a joke, to punish her, to hide her, to make her live among those her people once ruled. But Ethan didn't laugh. He saw the sadness in her eyes, the weight she carried beyond her body. That night, while others drank and gossiped, Ethan walked by her shuttle again. He saw her standing outside, looking up at the stars. "Alone, can't sleep?" he asked quietly. She turned her head. "Do humans ever stop talking?" "Only when they don't have someone to talk to," Ethan replied. For the first time the princess smiled, small, almost invisible but real. As the wind carried dust across the landing yard, something unspoken began between them. A strange feeling of connection between two lonely souls from different worlds. She didn't know yet that this man would change her life. And he didn't know that this woman, mocked and abandoned, carried a secret that could shake empires. The next morning, rumors spread across Ravos 9 that the princess was here to stay. Her quarters were set up beside the workshop. Her ship remained grounded, its engines silent. Ethan was assigned to her full-time, to repair her shuttle and assist her with human tools. The workers laughed again. "Lucky man," they said. Maybe he likes them big. But Ethan ignored them. He saw something in her eyes that no one else did. A spark of fire trapped behind layers of hurt. When he handed her a repaired control panel, she said softly, "You fix things quickly." He replied, "That's my job." Then she looked at him for a long moment and whispered, "Can you fix people too?" Ethan didn't know how to answer that. He just said maybe and went back to work. But deep down he already knew. Something about this alien princess was not what it seemed. The stars above Ravos 9 burned quietly. No one yet understood that their meeting would start a story the galaxy would never forget. The mechanic and the outcast princess bound by fate, about to uncover a secret buried beneath power and shame. And before this tale unfolds any further, if you enjoy stories of humans and aliens, of courage, emotion, and destiny, then gently, my friend, subscribe to this channel. More worlds, more hearts, and more secrets await you here. Days passed on the desert planet of Ravos 9. The sun rose red, burned hot, and fell again into the endless dunes. Life in the outpost returned to its noisy rhythm, but something had changed quietly in its heart. The alien princess Lyra of Zarex now lived among humans. She ate in silence, walked alone, and spoke only when needed. The workers still laughed behind her back, whispering words like royal joke and the emperor's burden. But one man never joined their laughter. Ethan Ward, the human mechanic with eyes like quiet storms. Each morning, Ethan arrived early at the workshop. The metal air smelled of oil and sand. There he would find the princess already standing beside her shuttle, studying its alien systems like a warrior studying her blade. She didn't know much about human tools, but her curiosity was sharp. Ethan noticed how she watched every move he made. The way he welded, fixed, replaced, repaired. It wasn't pride that held her there, it was something else. Something like hunger, a hunger to learn. One morning, as Ethan opened the shuttle panels, sparks flew. The princess flinched slightly, her glowing blue eyes narrowing. "Do all humans work this dangerously?" she asked. Ethan chuckled, wiping grease from his hands. "Only when we can't afford to stop." She tilted her head. "Your species is strange." "And yours?" Ethan asked. "You live in golden palaces. Yet here you are." For a heartbeat she froze, then she said softly, "Maybe I wanted to see how others survive." But Ethan could tell there was more behind those words. Pain, exile, and secrets wrapped in royal silence. When the sun reached its highest point, Ethan brought her water. The other workers stared. A human man offering a drink to a royal alien outcast, it wasn't bravery, it was kindness. But kindness was rarer than gold on Ravos 9. She accepted the bottle awkwardly, her long fingers brushing his hand for just a second. Her skin was cool and faintly metallic. Ethan didn't pull away that moment, simple and quiet, stayed in both their minds longer than either would admit. Later that day, she watched him fix an old cargo engine. The gears jammed, the cables burned. But Ethan refused to give up. "Why do you fight the machine?" she asked. "Because someone needs it," he said. "Even if it's broken?" She pressed. "Especially then," he answered. She stared at him for a long moment. As if his words reached a place inside her she thought was gone. That night, the sky filled with lightning from a rare sandstorm. The wind howled like monsters across the desert. The outpost lights flickered and power began to fail. Ethan rushed to the generator house, working fast, hands shaking as sparks leapt around him. The storm cut the main line, threatening to shut down the whole base. Through the roaring wind, he saw the princess walking straight toward him, her cloak whipping in the air. "You'll die out here," he shouted. "I've survived worse," she said, holding out a glowing crystal from her ship. "Use this, it channels energy." Ethan hesitated, then connected it to the generator core. The lights returned in a blinding surge, saving the entire outpost. The storm raged, but inside the light they stood side by side, their shadows merging into one. When morning came, the overseer accused the princess of damaging equipment. He told her to stay inside, to stop interfering, but Ethan spoke up. "She saved us," the overseer sneered. "A royal mistake saved us? Don't make me laugh." Ethan stepped closer, his voice low and firm. "You'll thank her later." The room went silent. The humans had never heard Ethan talk back before. And the princess? She had never seen anyone defend her like that. Something shifted in her that moment. A wall inside her cracked just enough for light to enter. Later that evening, as Ethan cleaned his tools, he found her waiting near his workshop door. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "You risked trouble for me," she said. He shrugged. "Someone had to tell the truth." "You're not afraid of my kind?" she asked. Ethan smiled a little. "I've fixed worse things than ships." "Princess." Her lips twitched as if she wanted to smile, but couldn't quite remember how. She followed him inside, curious about his small human workshop. It was messy, full of tools, gears, and half-repaired droids. She touched a small robot sitting on the shelf. its eyelights flickering. "What is this?" she asked. "Old assistant unit." "Doesn't work anymore," Ethan replied. She tilted her head. "You keep broken things close." "Maybe because I hope one day they'll start working again," he said quietly. Her gaze softened, her voice low. "You sound like someone who has lost much." Ethan didn't answer, but she could see truth in his silence that night. She couldn't sleep. The words "broken things" echoed in her mind. For years she had been called broken by her father, by her people, by herself. Too large, too emotional, too different to rule. But this human saw her not as a burden, not as a joke, but as someone worth speaking to, worth defending. And that frightened her more than any exile ever could. The next morning, as Ethan worked under the shuttle, a strange vibration shook the ground. He slid out, alarmed. The air shimmered faintly near the ship's engine, glowing veins of blue light pulsing like blood beneath metal. "What did you do?" he asked. The princess looked just as confused. "Nothing." But deep within the ship, something ancient had awakened. A forgotten part of her royal vessel, and perhaps a forgotten part of herself. The glow faded quickly, but not before Ethan saw the symbol. An old Xerex mark that pulsed once, then vanished. A mark only seen on genetic experiment ships. He didn't tell her what he saw, not yet, but in his heart, a question formed. Who exactly was this woman? And why had the Emperor truly sent her here? That night, Ethan wrote her name in his repair log. Not as Princess Lyra of Xerex, but as Lyra, classified unknown. He didn't know that soon. His small act of curiosity would pull them both into something far greater than exile. The outpost would never be the same, and neither would their hearts. The nights on Ravos 9 grew colder after the storm. The wind carried a strange hum across the metal plains. Like a forgotten song whispering through rust and dust, most people ignored it. But Ethan felt it every time he worked near the princess's shuttle. Something about that ship wasn't right. Something was alive inside it. Princess Lyra spent more time in the workshop now. She watched Ethan work, sometimes in silence, sometimes asking questions that made him stop and think. She had started helping and holding tools, reading human manuals, trying to understand this new world. But every time she stood near her ship, the air around her felt heavier. Lights flickered. Machines reacted as if recognizing her presence, and once, when Ethan's hand brushed against the ship's core panel, he felt a pulse like a heartbeat beneath metal. One evening, Ethan was alone, fixing the shuttle's navigation system. Lyra had gone to the quarters for rest, but her ship hummed faintly. Then suddenly, the console lit up by itself, the alien symbols rearranged, glowing in blue and gold. A message flickered across the screen, old Xerex language, but the translation came through in static English. Subject 47B, Royal Genome Activation suspended. Genetic core detected. Ethan's breath caught. He didn't understand everything, but he knew what those words meant. Her body carried something hidden, a dormant power sealed by royal science. When Lyra returned, he didn't mention it. She looked exhausted, her face pale and her breathing heavy. "You should rest," he said softly. "I can't," she replied. "Every night I feel something inside me, like energy trying to wake up." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of not knowing. Ethan hesitated. "Maybe it's the ship reacting to you." She shook her head slowly. "No, Ethan. The ship is reacting because of me." That night, she told him something she had never told anyone. "When I was young," she said quietly, "the royal healers ran tests on me. They said I carried a flaw, something unstable in my blood." Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "They said it was a disease of power, something from the old bloodlines." She looked down at her hands. "My father hated it. He said I was cursed, that my body carried an ancient code that should have died generations ago." Ethan listened. His heart pounding, he remembered the ship's message. Royal Genome Activation. It wasn't a disease, it was an experiment. A secret genetic weapon hidden inside a living heir. The next day, he decided to check the ship again. While Lyra slept, he accessed the lower compartments beneath the engine bay. He found a small chamber sealed with alien metal, the markings glowing faintly blue. Using his human tools, he pried open a corner, just enough to see inside there. Surrounded by glowing light was a crystal core, pulsing in rhythm with the sound of her heartbeat. When he touched it, images flashed before his eyes. Visions of battlefields, burning planets, and a giant figure of light tearing through the stars. Then he heard a voice, soft but powerful, echoing in his mind. Protect the carrier. The last of Zarek's Alpha. Ethan fell back, gasping for air. His hands shook, his skin cold. He realized what this meant. Lyra wasn't just an exiled princess. She was the last living host of an ancient Zarek's weapon, one that could destroy or remake worlds. Later, when Lyra came to find him, she saw fear in his eyes. "Ethan, what did you do?" she asked quietly. He looked at her, unsure what to say. "I think I found the reason your father sent you here," he whispered. Her voice hardened. "Tell me." Ethan hesitated, then said, "He didn't send you here to punish you, Lyra. He sent you here to keep others safe." Her eyes widened, a mix of pain and anger. "Safe from what?" she asked. Ethan swallowed. "From you." For a long time she said nothing. The silence between them felt heavy, filled with memories and fear. Then finally she spoke, her voice trembling. "I never wanted power," she said. "I just wanted to belong." Ethan reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe you still can," he said gently. But she shook her head. "Not if what you say is true. I'm not just my father's daughter. I'm his greatest mistake." That night the ship's glow grew stronger. Machines all across the outpost began to react. Scanners flickered. Power surges rippled through the sand. The humans thought it was another storm, but Ethan knew better. The princess's power was awakening. He found her outside, standing in the dust, her eyes burning blue like twin stars. "I can feel it," she whispered. "It's like something is calling me from the sky." Ethan stepped closer. "Then we'll find out what it is, one together." She turned to him, her face torn between fear and hope. "Why would you help me, when even my own people cast me away?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Because you're not a monster, Lyra, and maybe, neither am I." As he said those words, the ship behind them came alive, its engines hummed softly, panels shifting as if breathing, and deep within its core, a hidden transmission activated far away across the stars. Inside the golden halls of the Zarek's Empire, a holographic message reached the Emperor's throne. Subject 47B detected. Activation sequence beginning. The Emperor's eyes narrowed, his voice cold. "So, she lives," he whispered, "and the human is with her." He turned to his commander. "Send a recovery team," he said, "but if she awakens completely, destroy her." Back on Ravos 9, Ethan and Lyra stood under the night sky, unaware of the danger speeding toward them. For the first time in her life, she felt both terrified and free. For the first time, Ethan realized he was part of something much larger than fixing ships. The desert wind whispered between them, and somewhere deep inside her, the ancient heart of Zarex began to beat again. The next morning, Ravos 9 felt different. The air was heavier, charged with invisible energy. Machines that had worked for years without trouble now glitched. Lights flickered and drones crashed midair. Something unseen pulsed beneath the surface of the planet, and only Ethan and Princess Lyra knew why. She had barely slept when she did. She saw visions, endless galaxies burning in blue fire. She stood in the center, her body shining like a living sun, and behind her, a shadow whispered her name again and again. When she woke, her hands glowed faintly, small arcs of blue light running along her veins. Ethan watched her silently, trying to stay calm. He wanted to believe she could control it, but deep down he knew the truth. This was no accident. Her power was waking up, and it was hungry. That day, Ethan decided to test something. He set up a small generator in the workshop and asked Lyra to touch one of the copper wires. At first she hesitated. "You want me to electrocute myself?" she asked with dry humor. Ethan smiled softly. "Not exactly. I just want to see something." When her hand touched the wire, the generator exploded in sparks. The machines around them powered on without fuel. The lights turned blue, and Ethan's heart nearly stopped when he realized that she was creating energy. Not absorbing it, Lyra stepped back, shaking. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. Ethan put his hands up gently. "It's okay, you're just stronger than before." She looked at her hands like they belonged to someone else. "This is why my father sent me away," she said, her voice breaking. "Not because I was weak, but because I was dangerous." That night, as they sat outside the workshop, Ethan saw streaks of light in the sky. Not stars, not meteors. He pulled out his scope, his stomach turning cold. It was a Zarex fleet, small ships entering the atmosphere without signals. They were coming, silent and fast. He didn't tell her yet, but he knew what that meant. The Emperor had found her, meanwhile, inside the Empire's command ship. Commander Virex knelt before the Emperor's hologram. His voice was deep and sharp. "She's on Ravos 9, my lord," he said. "Do you want her alive?" The Emperor's eyes glowed gold. "Only if she obeys. If she resists, erase her." Virex nodded and cut the link. Behind him, a squad of armored Zarek soldiers loaded their plasma rifles. Their target, Princess Lyra and the human who defied the Empire. Back on the planet, Ethan finally told her. She stood silent for a long time, staring at the burning sky. "They're coming for me," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "Then we fight." She turned to him, her face unreadable. "You don't have to die for me." "Ethan," she said. He smiled faintly. "Maybe I don't, but I'll live better if I fight beside you." As the sun set, the outpost was silent. Most workers had gone to their quarters. Unaware of the death descending from the sky, Ethan gathered his old defense drones, repaired their circuits, and armed them with scrap weapons. Lyra stood beside him, dressed in her royal battle cloak, its edges glowing faintly. "You've done this before," she said. Watching his hands move with purpose, he shrugged. "War leaves a man who either forgets how to fight or never stops." For a moment, they just looked at each other. Two souls from different worlds, standing on the same fragile ground. When the Zarek ships finally landed, the night exploded in light. The desert wind roared as soldiers marched out, their armor gleaming under the moons. "By order of Emperor Zarex," the commander shouted, "surrender the carrier and the human mechanic." Lyra's eyes burned, her voice low and calm. "I am the daughter of Zarex," she said, "and I do not surrender." Ethan hit the switch and the defense drones came alive. They fired plasma bursts, lighting the sand like fireworks. The battle began. Chaos and thunder filled the air. Ethan fought like a man with nothing to lose. He used his machines, his tools, even molten metal to defend the outpost. Lyra fought beside him, her hands glowing brighter and brighter. Each movement sent waves of blue energy across the battlefield, melting metal and turning sand into glass. Then, something inside her snapped. A deep, ancient voice echoed in her mind. "Awaken, Alpha of Zarex. Claim what was stolen." Her body lifted slightly off the ground, her cloak whipping in the wind. Ethan could barely look at her. She shone like a star, her entire form surrounded by blue fire. The soldiers stopped shooting, frozen in awe and fear, and then, in one burst of light, everything went silent. When the dust cleared, the ground was scorched, the soldiers gone, their ships half melted. Ethan stood in the middle of the ruins, his body trembling. Lyra was on her knees, breathing hard. "I didn't mean to," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I didn't want to hurt them." Ethan knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I know," he said softly. "But now the whole Empire knows you're alive, and they'll come harder next time." In the distance, the communication towers of the outpost flickered. The Emperor's voice broke through the static, deep and cold. "Lyra, you were supposed to die quietly," he said. Lyra looked up, her eyes glowing again. "Then you should have sent better killers," she whispered. The hologram vanished. Ethan stood beside her, both of them breathing heavy under the ruined sky. They knew what would come next, not exile, not a mission, but a war that night. As the fire from fallen ships burned in the sand, Lyra looked at her reflection in the metal of her shuttle. She no longer saw the weak princess her people mocked. She saw something new, a warrior reborn from pain, power and loss, and behind her, Ethan stood silently, watching her with quiet determination. Neither of them spoke, but both knew that the galaxy had changed forever. The awakening had begun, and the Empire would never sleep again. The morning after the battle came without birds or wind. Only silence, thick and uneasy, hung over the smoking wrecks that dotted the dunes. Ethan and Lyra walked through the ruins together, counting what little remained. The outpost was scarred, its towers half melted, its workers frightened and whispering in corners. No one dared meet the princess's eyes now. They had seen her power, and fear was easier than respect. Ethan tried to rebuild the communications array, but every signal he caught carried fragments of warnings. The Empire was regrouping, sending new forces, and every bounty network now listed the same two names. Lyra of Zarex and Ethan Ward marked as traitors. He didn't tell her immediately. He wanted her to have one more quiet hour before the storm returned. She stood by the window of the command shed, staring at the horizon, When I was small, she said softly, my father told me loyalty was everything. Her voice was calm, but her eyes glimmered. He never said what to do when loyalty becomes a chain. Ethan paused his work, looking at her reflection in the cracked glass. Maybe loyalty should be to people, not empires, he said. She smiled faintly. Then you've already broken more laws than I ever have. Behind them, someone listened. A thin shadow slipping away between cargo crates. Quiet as dust, his name was Merrick Holt, a human officer who had once served beside Ethan in the war. He owed his life to Ethan once, but debts mean little when fear rules the heart. He had seen what Lyra did to the soldiers, how she turned night into fire. He believed she was a weapon that could not be controlled. And in fear, men do foolish things that evening. Merrick found the old comm dish still working on reserve power. He sent a message into the void, coded in the Empire's old frequency. Subject 47 alive, he whispered. Coordinates attached, human mechanic assisting. Reward requested. The reply came almost instantly, cold and metallic. Reward confirmed. Extraction team dispatched. He shut off the signal, breathing hard. He told himself it was the right thing, that Ethan would thank him later for ending this nightmare. But deep down he knew he had just sold 2 lives for a promise that would never be kept. Meanwhile, Lyra and Ethan worked side by side through the night. They rebuilt the ship's reactor and sealed the fuel lines. Ethan added human shielding to the alien engines, blending 2 technologies never meant to touch. When the system came online, blue light filled the hangar, soft and steady. It's stable, Ethan said, exhaling. For now, Lyra replied, her gaze distant. But I can feel them searching. Then we leave soon, he said. She turned toward him. Leave where? Anywhere but here, he answered simply. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope. But hope is fragile on Ravos 9 at midnight. The ground trembled again, small, deliberate, rhythmic. Ethan froze, tools falling from his hand. That's no storm, he whispered outside. Blue searchlights sliced through the darkness. Imperial dropships, 5 of them, surrounding the outpost like silent predators. Merrick ran into the hangar, panting. They're here. We have to hide. Ethan looked at him sharply, suspicion flickering in his eyes. How did they find us so fast? He demanded. Merrick looked away. Maybe they tracked the wrecks. Maybe. But before he could finish, the radio on his belt crackled with Imperial code. Ethan's face went pale. He ripped the device from Merrick's uniform. The frequency was still active. Transmit complete, the machine whispered. Lyra's eyes darkened, glowing with sudden light. You betrayed us, she said quietly. Merrick stepped back, hands shaking. I did what had to be done. She's not human, Ethan. She's a weapon. Ethan's voice broke like thunder. She's not a weapon, she's a person. Outside, soldiers were already storming the gates. Ethan grabbed Merrick by the collar. You doomed us all, he hissed. Merrick tried to pull away. The Empire promised safety. Lyra's voice cut through the chaos, deep and resonant. They promised nothing but silence, she said, and the lights above them flickered violently. Ethan pushed Merrick aside and ran to the control panel. Sealing the hangar doors, Lyra, can you fly? He shouted. She hesitated. Not fast enough, and then we fight again, he said. His jaw set. The soldiers broke through the outer walls. Blasters firing, Ethan's defense drones activated, spraying light across the dark. But the enemy numbers were overwhelming. Merrick hid behind a crate, trembling as the sound of war filled the hangar. Ethan saw him there, but he couldn't bring himself to shoot an old friend. Lyra stood in front of the main gate, her hands raised, her eyes glowing white now. Stay behind me, she whispered. A pulse of light erupted from her palms, sending a wave across the battlefield. It knocked soldiers to the ground, tore through metal, and shattered glass like wind through leaves. Then suddenly a sharp pain hit her side, an energy dart, fired by Merrick. He had taken one of the soldiers' rifles. Aiming at her from behind, Ethan saw it too late. Lyra! He shouted, running toward her. She fell to her knees, light flickering around her like dying stars. Merrick lowered the rifle, tears in his eyes. I had to, he said weakly. I couldn't let her destroy everything. Ethan's fist met his jaw before the sentence finished, sending him crashing into the dirt. Everything she destroyed was trying to kill us, Ethan growled. He knelt beside Lyra, pressing his hand against the wound. Her blood shimmered blue, not red, and it glowed through his fingers. I'm fine, she whispered. Even as the world dimmed around her, Don't you dare say that, Ethan said, voice breaking above them. The Emperor's command ship entered orbit, its shadow covering the desert like a storm. A deep voice echoed through every channel. Bring me the princess or burn the planet. Ethan looked up at the sky. His heart pounding, he turned to the fallen Merrick, who lay stunned and said quietly, You didn't just betray us. You betrayed everyone here. Lyra's eyes fluttered open, faint light pulsing in her veins. I can still stop them, she murmured. Ethan shook his head. You can't even stand. I don't need to, she whispered. I only need to remember. Her body began to glow again, brighter, faster. Ethan stepped back as the energy spread through the floor. Every damaged drone, every broken circuit, every ruined engine sparked to life. Machines obeyed her will, rising like an army of ghosts. Outside, the Empire's soldiers screamed as the machines turned on them. The night became a storm of fire and light. When it was over, the silence returned and heavier than before. The outpost was in ruins, the sand turned to glass, Merrick was gone, his body lost somewhere in the wreckage. Ethan carried Lyra back to the shuttle, her pulse faint but steady. She looked at him weakly. I told you, loyalty is dangerous, he smiled sadly. Then we'll make our own kind, above them. The Emperor watched through his command feed, his expression unreadable. She is awakening faster than predicted, he said to his aides. Send word to the archives, initiate Project Recall. She cannot be allowed to remember everything. And down below, in the flickering light of a dying dawn, Ethan whispered to the sleeping princess, I won't let them take you again. The desert was quiet, but the war had only begun. The sun rose weak and red over the dunes, casting long shadows across the burned-out outpost. The air shimmered with heat, and smoke from the night's battle hung like a ghost above the ground. Ethan stood alone beside the shuttle, his hands trembling as he tried to fix the cracked control panel. Every joint in the ship buzzed with leftover energy from Lyra's power. Still humming like a heartbeat, he glanced back into the ship, where the princess lay unconscious on a medical cot made of scavenged metal and torn wiring. Her breathing was shallow but steady, the blue veins beneath her skin pulsing like small rivers of light. He had never seen anything so fragile and powerful at the same time. Hours passed before she stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, catching the first rays of sunlight. Ethan, she whispered, her voice soft but clear. He rushed to her side, relief washing over his face. You're safe, he said, though he didn't believe it himself. Her gaze drifted to the window, to the sky where faint trails of smoke still marked where the Empire's ships had fallen. Not for long, she murmured. He'll come for me now. Ethan frowned. Let him come, I'll stop him. She gave a weak, knowing smile. You can't stop an emperor. As if summoned by her words, the lights in the shuttle flickered. The walls began to hum, and then a sharp, cold light filled the air. A holographic image materialized. Tall, Regal draped in golden shadow, the Emperor of Xerix, his expression carved from steel, his voice calm and venomous. My daughter, he said slowly. You've caused quite a spectacle. Lyra sat up, pain twisting across her face. Don't call me that, she hissed. The Emperor smiled faintly. You've grown bold. Exile has sharpened your tongue. His eyes flicked to Ethan, standing protectively beside her. And you must be the mechanic, the one who thinks he can touch what belongs to the throne. Ethan clenched his fists. She doesn't belong to anyone. The Emperor's voice deepened. Everyone belongs to something human. You belong to death. Lyra moved between them, her energy flaring faintly. What do you want, Father? She demanded. I want what was taken from me, he said. You were never meant to live among them. You were an experiment. A creation meant to unify two bloodlines. Xerix and human, our future depends on you. Ethan's eyes widened. What did he say? But the Emperor ignored him, continuing. Come home, Lyra, and you will have your crown, your power, your legacy, and I will forgive your rebellion. Lyra's jaw tightened. And if I refuse, then I will burn that desert until even your name is dust. Ethan stepped forward, fury flashing in his eyes. You think power makes you a god, but you're just a coward hiding behind soldiers. The Emperor's hologram turned slightly, studying him with cold amusement. Brave words. For a dying man, he said quietly. Lyra turned sharply toward Ethan, confusion spreading across her face. What does he mean? She asked. The Emperor smiled. He didn't tell you? The mechanic's body is failing. His cells poisoned from the radiation of this planet. He has less than a year. Perhaps less. Ethan looked down, unable to meet her gaze. I didn't want you to know, he said softly. Lyra's hands trembled, glowing faintly blue. You were helping me all this time and you're... alive, he interrupted. That's enough. The Emperor's voice sliced through the air. You see, daughter, humans lie even when they mean well. They are weak, selfish creatures, but you are my blood. You were meant for eternity. Lyra's eyes burned with tears and light. Maybe that's why I don't want to be like you, she whispered. The Emperor's expression darkened. You will return, or I will unleash Project Recall. And you will forget who you are, forget this human, forget everything. Before Ethan could react, the hologram pulsed, sending waves of static through the ship. Lyra screamed, clutching her head as strange symbols began to flicker beneath her skin. Stop it, Ethan shouted, slamming his fists into the console. The Emperor's image wavered, laughing quietly. She cannot stop it. The recall is written in her blood. Ethan grabbed a fusion cutter and sliced through the power relay. The hologram vanished in a burst of smoke. Lyra fell back against the cot, shaking violently, her skin flashing between pale and silver. Ethan, she gasped, he's inside my mind. I can feel him trying to erase me. Ethan knelt beside her, gripping her hands. Then fight him, Lyra. You're stronger than him. Her voice cracked. I'm not strong enough. Yes, you are, he said. You're not his creation anymore, you're your own. She looked at him, her eyes full of light and tears. I don't want to forget you, she whispered. He smiled weakly. Then remember me right now, even if it's just this moment. Her energy surged, burning through the floor, the ship trembling as if alive. Ethan, she said. If I lose control and run, not a chance, he replied. Outside, the sky darkened again. A colossal ship was descending, its engines shaking the sand into storms. The Emperor's flagship, the Sovereign Wrath, a city-sized weapon ready to erase the planet. Lyra's pulse synced with its energy, her body reacting instinctively. She rose slowly from the cot, glowing brighter than ever. Ethan, he wants my power, she said, her voice now layered with echoes. Then give him something he can't control, Ethan said, grabbing his tools, connecting her energy core directly into the ship's main reactor. If we overload this system, maybe we can shut his link down. The Emperor's voice echoed faintly through the air. You can't win, daughter, you'll destroy yourself. Lyra's energy flared like a star, her body hovering inches off the ground. Then let this be my choice, she said. The desert exploded with light, a wave of blue fire stretching across the horizon. The Emperor's ship faltered in orbit, system shorting. Inside, his aides screamed as panels melted. Impossible, he whispered, staring at the monitor as his daughter's energy cut his control completely. When the light faded, the shuttle lay broken, half buried in sand. Ethan crawled through the smoke, coughing. Lyra! He shouted, searching desperately. He found her lying on the floor, motionless but breathing, her glow dim and flickering. She opened her eyes weakly, whispering, I made my choice. Ethan nodded, tears cutting through the dust on his face. And I made mine, he said. I'm not leaving you. Above them, the Emperor's ship retreated, damaged but not destroyed. The war wasn't over, but for now the desert was quiet again. Lyra rested her head against Ethan's shoulder, her voice barely a whisper. I think I understand what freedom feels like. Ethan smiled faintly. Then you've already won, but high above them, in the shattered control room of the Sovereign Wrath, the Emperor stood before a glowing console. His hand hovered over a hidden command, his face unreadable. Let her think she's free, he murmured. Until the final sequence begins, the screen flickered, revealing Lyra's pulse pattern, alive, but unstable. Soon, he whispered, you will return to me, my daughter.
One way or another, and somewhere in the dunes below.
Ethan's heart skipped, as if he could feel that darkness still watching them from the sky. The desert was still, silent in the pale light of morning. A faint wind whispered across the wreckage, carrying the scent of burnt metal and ozone. Ethan sat beside the broken shuttle, his hands covered in dust and blood, his eyes fixed on the faint glow that came from within. Inside, Lyra slept in the medical chamber, her breathing faint but steady, her skin pulsing with soft blue light every few seconds. The ship hummed as her energy flowed through the circuits like a heartbeat. Keeping everything alive, he had been awake for nearly 2 days, refusing to rest, afraid that if he closed his eyes, she might fade away. Far above, in the black void of space, the Emperor's crippled flagship drifted in silence. The crew struggled to restore control. Every system was half dead. Every sensor blinded by the shockwave Lyra had unleashed. In the center of the ship, the Emperor watched a flickering projection of his daughter. "She broke the link," one of his commanders said, fear in his voice. "She burned half our fleet doing it." The Emperor didn't answer for a long moment. Finally, he whispered, "Then she is stronger than I thought." His eyes narrowed. "But she still carries the code. She cannot escape her blood." Down below, Ethan stared at the horizon where the twin suns were rising together. He thought about everything that had happened. The arrival, the exile, the battles, the betrayals, and somehow in all that chaos, an alien princess and a broken mechanic had found something neither of them believed existed: hope. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, cracked data pad, the last working piece of his old communicator. The readings were unstable, showing faint energy spikes within Lyra's DNA. Whatever she had awakened wasn't fading. It was growing, evolving, becoming something new. Then, a soft voice came from behind him. "You should rest." Ethan turned, his heart lifting. Lyra stood in the doorway, weak but awake, wrapped in a loose blanket made from the ship's thermal fabric. "You scared me," he said, smiling faintly. "I scare myself sometimes," she replied with a tired laugh. Her steps were shaky, but she moved closer. Kneeling beside him for a long time, they just sat there in silence, watching the twin suns rise higher. Finally, Lyra said softly, "He'll come again, won't he?" Ethan nodded, "Yes." "And you'll fight him again?" "I'll fight anyone who tries to take you," he said, his voice steady but low. She looked at him with something deep and unreadable in her eyes. "What if I become what he wanted me to be?" She whispered. "Then I'll remind you who you really are," he said, "even if it kills me." A soft hum filled the air, and the sand beneath them vibrated faintly. Ethan frowned. "You feel that?" Lyra closed her eyes. "It's not the Empire," she said. "It's something else." The ground cracked open several meters away, and a column of blue light shot into the sky. The same color as the energy in Lyra's veins. Ethan shielded his eyes. "What is that?" "I don't know," she said, rising slowly. "But it's calling to me." Before he could stop her, she began walking toward it, drawn by an unseen force. "Lyra, wait." Ethan shouted, running after her as she stepped closer. The light shimmered and split into patterns. Alien symbols, floating in the air. They pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, ancient Xerex glyphs she somehow understood. "It's a memory," she said, her voice trembling. "Something he buried inside me." The symbols flashed faster, forming a portal-like vortex of energy. Ethan grabbed her hand. "Don't go in there." "We don't know what it is." She turned to him, eyes full of both fear and determination. "If I don't go, I'll never be free," she said. "If I do, I might never come back." Ethan held her hand tighter. "Then I'm going with you." The world exploded in light. For a moment, everything vanished. The desert, the ship, even the suns. When Ethan opened his eyes again, they stood in a vast, silver void filled with glowing threads of light. It was like standing inside a living memory. In front of them appeared the image of the Emperor. Not a hologram, but a memory recording. "You were never meant to feel," the image said. "You were built to rule, not to love." Lyra stared at it, tears in her eyes. "You're wrong," she whispered. The memory continued. "Emotion is the flaw that weakens bloodlines, the virus that turns order into chaos." Ethan stepped forward, shouting, "Then call me Chaos, because I'll tear your order apart before she belongs to it." The threads of light began to twist violently, reacting to Lyra's emotions. The Emperor's image flickered, distorting. Lyra screamed as the energy poured into her. Memories, her birth, her exile, her experiments, all flashing before her eyes. And then something new appeared, a small, glowing fragment of memory the Emperor had tried to erase. It showed a lab years ago, a scientist holding a child, half human, half Xarex, the same blue veins, the same glow. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. "That's..." Lyra turned to him, her voice shaking. "It's you." He stared in disbelief. "That's impossible." But as the memory continued, it showed the Emperor watching from behind the glass. "The mechanic was not random," the recording said. "He is the prototype, the first attempt, the failed fusion of Xerex and human. Lyra stumbled backward, shock written across her face. He made you before me, she whispered. Ethan fell to his knees, the truth sinking like a blade. I was supposed to die, he said, his voice hollow, and you were supposed to replace me. The Emperor's final words echoed through the void. One was built to feel, the other to survive. Together. They are the key to godhood. Lyra clenched her fists, glowing with pure light. I am not your creation anymore, she shouted. And neither is he. The threads of light erupted around them, burning the image of the Emperor into dust. The void collapsed, and suddenly they were back in the desert. The blue pillar fading into the air, Lyra collapsed into Ethan's arms. Exhausted but free, he held her close, whispering, It's over. She shook her head weakly. No, it's beginning. The sky above them shimmered as a new star appeared. Glowing brighter than the sun's, Lyra looked up at it and smiled faintly. It's beautiful, Ethan nodded. What do you think it means? She whispered. It means we broke the chain. But as the camera would pull back, showing the vast desert and the new star burning in the heavens, a faint echo of the Emperor's voice would linger in the air. Even broken chains can be reforged, and somewhere, deep in space inside a hidden vault of the ruined flagship, a small capsule pulsed with blue light. Inside it, 2 heartbeats echoed in unison. One Xarax, one human, a new beginning. Or perhaps another test. The story would end with a single line. In the end, they were never enemies. They were evolution itself,